We're back. Recruitment funding 1 year on. We've got a new guest today, Matt Betty from 1PS. Matt, also ex-professional rugby player for Gloucester, which is always interesting. We had a nice chat about that before, and the video would probably go on for 4 hours if we were talking about rugby. But let's talk recruitment finance. We'll get a bit of a snapshot from Matt at 1PS, and then we'll focus on the one question, which is a bit of an interesting one, actually. So, Matt, introduce yourself. Tell us a tiny little bit about 1PS, and then we'll jump into that question.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that introduction. I'm the sales manager at 1PS. 1PS are a fintech company we set up, I think, in 2017. So, we are, like many others in the market, we're a recruitment funder, but we focus on back office services as well. So, we'll handle things like credit control, we'll handle invoicing, we'll handle timesheets. So
100% financier, paying the workers, paying the agency their profit, etc.
Yeah.
Cool. And you've been with 1PS for how long?
Yeah. A couple of years now, I think. Yeah, a couple of years. I just think we were just talking about it before, but I think when I joined, we were still relatively fresh. And like I say, 2017, we sort of set up, but the initial part of that was a lot of getting the tech sorted and the portal up to standard, and getting the funding in. And once we did that, we went to market, and I was introduced to the guys a couple of years ago through rugby, and it's been a good journey. There was probably 4 of us in an office then, and I think 3 or 4 offices, maybe 5 offices later. Probably up to 25, 30 members of staff now. So it's a good journey.
Yeah, it's an amazing journey. And quickly, tell us about your rugby journey, because I'm sure everyone would be really interested.
Less exciting as some of the others, but it started around your neck of the woods. So I was at Sale when I was a kid in Manchester, and I signed for Gloucester when I was 18. I played for Ireland. You can tell by the accent. I played for Ireland under 18s, 19s and 20s at the Junior World Cup, and then signed for Gloucester, and I was at Gloucester Hartbury. And I was there for 4 or 5 years, did my degree there, and had a few games, went abroad playing, and came back, signed for London Irish for a year or 2, and then went down the sort of semi-professional route and fell into work and into sales, as you do.
Recruitment finance, rugby to recruitment finance. That's got a video title all over it. So
Netflix will be all over that. Netflix.
They would be. They 100% would be.
You make some of the stuff I've seen them make. Actually, that probably is not.
Jump into recruitment finance. So the question I had for you, I guess, and 1PS, minimum. So it's recruitment funding 1 year on. Obviously, things were changing a year ago. Things have changed now. And I was interested to talk about, I guess, an example, no names named or anything like that, but an example of a recruitment business that you've moved across to 1PS from a different provider during the pandemic. And I guess why they moved, what the reasoning for it, and what for the change?
Yeah, it was a strange one. Obviously, the pandemic was a really strange period, I think, for us. But we certainly saw growth there. It was a good opportunity, and probably this example is a good highlight of that for agencies to reassess things like their funder or their CRM, something like that. With this particular agency, I've been in touch with regularly, but they were pretty happy with their happy maybe not, but they were certainly busy enough to not have to focus.
Worry about it, absolutely. Yeah.
But then they came to us and said, look, I know we've been in touch. There's been an issue with they picked up quite a big client based in overseas, I think in Europe.
Okay.
Their current provider was struggling to provide funding for it.
That was a massive issue. Funding limits and credit limits during the pandemic was an issue for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it's still not fully, you'll know as well, it's still not fully recovered, but it's certainly stronger now than it was. But as soon as the pandemic hit, certain industries were just almost off limits, or it was very difficult, for guys in things like construction. It was very, very tough. But this particular agency, they had funding previously, but it was swept from underneath them, and they had sort of 15 or 20 contractors that they wanted to deliver on, and they weren't sure if they could get the funding. And it had submitted the credit request to the provider, and it had taken almost 2 weeks. I guess with insurance companies, as it can be referred sometimes.
Looking at it closer, they're looking at it closer. So now and before, look, if they're insuring something, they're putting their name and their risk behind it. They're taking more time to look into it, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this agency needed to know, look, can we do something? And it came to us almost as a backup, I imagine. It starts, if they can't do this, can you support? We were quick to look at it. And I think with our finance background, with a couple of our founders having sort of a risk assessment and compliance background within banking, I think it was really useful to use that and lean on that experience. We looked into it. And also we sort of came up with a plan where I was, okay, it's probably going to take a bit of time to establish whether or not we can accommodate that, but then there's going to be certain things that we can do. If it's a no from the insurers, what can we do to help and
building on payment history and just understanding the client a little bit more and just being a tiny little bit closer.
Yeah, I think we got more information on the client and perhaps I think I understand it's quite easy to do this, but as a request was submitted, computer says no, sorry, we can't fund that. And I think that's where we've been lucky and fortunate enough to be able to lean on that financial background and go, okay, Mr. Agency, you want to look at Mr. and Mrs. Agency, you want to look at this in more detail. Leave it with us and we'll see what we can do. And that's why we went. We looked at parent companies, sister companies. We looked at the financial books, the reason why it was rejected, and we sort of came up with a workaround. Our insurers weren't sure at the time either, so it wasn't like we could.
So it wasn't just one said yes and one said no. You actually built a real plan for this to kind of take a bit of risk each side to say, look.
Yeah, we wanted to support the agency being able to get workers in there and get projects started. The agency themselves had a good background and someone that we'd known for a while in the industry. So the level of trust there, absolutely. And I think from that we built a relationship pretty quickly. They were really happy with how we handled the transfer process and got all their workers.
So it goes to show that it's not always a computer says no, and there are workarounds, and there are sort of, I guess it depends on probably a number of things that your guys are looking at, not just the client, it's the people behind the agency, the type of the industry it is, I guess the paper trails, etc., and actually
100%.
growing
I think
into
one of the reasons, I think one of the reasons actually was that insurers were not keen on this particular example was that I think their accounts hadn't been filed, but they weren't actually late. I think they were borderline late, or they were due to be submitted, but they weren't actually late. But I think with the pandemic, a lot of insurers were just shying away from it, and that's at that point where we said, well, there's no massive red flags. It's just a case of X, Y, and Z, hasn't been submitted, and we were ready to speak to them, and the agency had a good relationship with the end client, and subsequently it was it worked out quite nicely. We actually self-insured originally, and until we built that payment history and trust, they paid on time as were promised.
And did they fill all the roles? And are they rocking and rolling with you guys now?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, they've got another situation very similar to this with another sort of startup with a slightly newer end client who's sort of attacking their market, and they've got a lot of roles to fill there, and credit limits are tight as it is, but because there's that relationship there, now we also know there's money coming in from their other workers with their other clients. So there's that level of trust. So we've made sure that they can supply.
It's looking at it right from the top, isn't it? A proper overview. And look, what a great story to say. Look, it doesn't always work with everyone. Everyone has good and bad bits, but that for you was the real research and going into it and potentially staying closer to it to start with. And I'm sure you're probably more comfortable with it than a lot of other things within the business now, which absolutely makes sense. And just because you stay close to it. So look, really appreciate you sharing that. That's a great example.
It's a nice one to have, actually, because everyone's happy at the end of it, which is, as isn't always the way it works. But I think in this example, it was very much a case of an agency was panicking, couldn't supply workers. They see a lot of money from it. If I've got the workers ready to go, I just haven't got the money to pay 20 workers, a lot of money a day. And subsequently, it worked out nicely. We managed to get the workers in and built that relationship from there.
Sounds like a win-win-win. So appreciate you coming on as well. Look, nice to finally have you on the series. I'm sure there'll be more to come. But great success story. Thanks for joining us. And
thanks for having me.